and the practical part of it. By the way, speaking of the evening newspaper, I've got to say this. You people are unique here in California, and I wanted to get a little idea of the feeling present at the moment in Southern California. So I got here a day early that I might just read some of your recent publications and so forth. And I purchased the local Los Angeles Times. I bought it Saturday morning. 750 pages. Everybody's talking and nobody's listening. 750 pages. Now that was just the newspaper. There were 240 more pages of magazine section. Now, that's not all. This is the Sunday paper. I purchased it Saturday morning. No wonder. No wonder. They have to, that much you've got to read. They should have published it Tuesday. In fact, it should have been post-dated for Sunday a month from now because it would take you that long to read it. But anyway, since here I have the Saturday paper, the Sunday paper Saturday morning, and knowing that the big basketball game was to be played Saturday night, I flipped over to the sport pages so I could be a prophet. I was sure the score was bound to be in there. But really, in all seriousness, I bought this paper, and being very absent-minded and not really doing much to keep up with dates and times, and having in Florida just recently terribly goofed on a speaking engagement, when I walked out of the book shop upstairs where I had bought the newspaper, 800 pages of newspaper for Pete's sake, took Rachel and I both to carry it, and then I looked at the date on it. I said, it's big for a Saturday paper, isn't it? Ours is four pages on Saturday. And that's every other Saturday. And it said Sunday. And then I looked at my watch, and it said 9:45. And I said, holy smoke, I'm supposed to be down here talking in 15 minutes. And I did. And Rachel, I said, Rach? I call her Rach. She responds to that, jumps. And then I went back in the shop and I asked the lady, I said, excuse me for being very stupid, but what day of the week is it? And she said, this Saturday. And I said, well, what am I doing getting a Sunday paper today? Has it got Sunday news in it? And she says, no, but it's got Saturday news in it. Well, so much for that. I've milked that dry. The honest teacher is the one who shows how, and is the one who knows that there is really neither teacher nor student, knowing that teacher is student and student is teacher. And this is literally true. This is no mystical statement, because there is no one who's ever stood before a class as teacher who didn't know that learning was taking place simultaneously, if not from the flow, from the looks, from the faces, from the questions that are heard, the silent questions that are sounded, and the looks, the quizzical looks. So therefore, to be the student is to be the teacher, and to be the teacher, believe me, is to be the student, as all of you will see, as all of you already know, having done it all. But your mission is really just started. From this point on, you'll find your own message, the messianic message. And this one knows that the stone may very well curse the water that erodes it. This one knows that error or belief lashes whatever props are pulled from beneath it, and that many flee at the lion's first lunge, cursing the teacher, student that insists one live the truth one is. I might say this, not for those here, but for the many in time to come, I suppose, who might hear this discourse or hear you echo it, and because you live it too. The honest teacher knows that he is often the dark night by means of which the bright light of morning is fully comprehended, so that no more teachers are necessary, no more books, no more ministers, no more temple in the city foursquare. Well, to help make this point clear, I wrote a story once, and I'd read it. I'm now sounding notes as we did this morning. It's a story I wrote a long time ago about a little lightning bug whose name was Elijah. Elijah, the luminous Lepidopterus. Now, I'm not showing off my erudition with that word Lepidopterus. I didn't know, but that's a word, a scientific word or something. I think it means bug. What? It means butterfly? Well, then I got the wrong word. Well, okay. His name is that. That's what wives are good for, isn't it? Shoot you down. Well, having been shot down, I go on with my story. Elijah, like the Elijah of old, wore a mantle. Remember, Elijah had a mantle, and when Elijah ascended, he left his mantle. That's what the Bible records. But anyway, Elijah, this little Elijah, wore a mantle of distress within himself. Not an uncommon ailment, Jim. That mantle of distress, that grind in the belly, that thing that says, "How long, Lord?" is the grandest blessing anyone can have. Because it's the goad that keeps complacency from setting in. It's that which has us up and about the business of self-discovery. Consequently, it's not bad, but a blessing. But how long? How woefully long it takes to understand what a blessing it is. And little friend, yours is a grand blessing too. Anyway, Elijah, with his uncommon ailment, said, you know, he wanted to know about himself. He wanted to know who he was, why he was, what he was. And while his companions seemed content to flit here and there, concerned with naught but their flitting, Elijah was driven by his inner disquiet, a strange discontent, to ask questions of himself and of the universe wherein he flitted. One day, in the blazing light of the high noon, Elijah flitted from updraft to downdraft, from east wind to west wind, and occasionally into a southern wind, searching for himself, searching for the real, asking millions of questions, but finding few answers. Who am I, he asked again and again, while he bounced from breeze to breeze, from one teacher to the next, from one guru to the next, from one book to the next, from one lecture to the next. Well, the sun was bright and hot, and the quest seemed long and wearisome. And the more Elijah looked, the less he found. The more he listened, the less he heard. The more he asked, the more answers he got, and the more confusing and conflicting were all of the answers and half-answers. And he couldn't tell the one from the other. And then one day, excessively weighted by his mantle of yearning, filled with despair and exhausted, just tired, little luminous Elijah gave up the search. It's useless, he said. It's hopeless. What in the hell makes me think I'll ever find the truth? I've found many things. Oh, but not all. I haven't found that light, that joy. With every question answered, he said to himself, with every question answered, 10 more are present to be asked again. Well, what is all this stuff and nonsense I hear about omniscience am I? Infinite wisdom am I? Infinite strength am I? Where is it? Why isn't it helping me now? What's wrong? Whereupon Elijah folded his wings in mid-flight and fell headlong into a big black hole. I pause this for a minute for an aside. It's interesting that our astronomers are so very much concerned at the moment about the big black holes that present themselves in space to be observed. Holes so powerfully black that nothing can emerge from them. No light emerges. Even, well, the hole was as deep as little Elijah's despair, and it was just as dark as his anguish. The hole was as awful as his agony, and as gruesome as the grind in his belly. Elijah had thought that he was unhappy before in his search. But now, this gloom, this black hole, this gloom of the black hole knew no bound. Dear God, said Elijah, this is worse. This is worse. Why? This is hell. Absolute hell. Death is preferable to this. What is this incessant searching? What has it brought me to? Cursed is the devil or whatever that ever started me out on a quest for truth, on a quest for identity. Self-discovery, he said. Bah, humbug. But then, just then it happened. It happened. In that awful darkness, Elijah blinked and he found his fanny. Elijah found his blinking, ever-present rear end. He found the very light he was. Oh, the brightness of himself. The strength and power of the all of himself. In one twinkle of a blink, in one twinkle of one blink, thanks to the darkness, thanks to the black hole, thanks to the anguish, thanks to the grind in the belly, luminous Elijah could see the yearn for self of himself. Great glory, he said, I've found myself. I am the light of the world. The darkness of the void, the darkness of the anguish has allowed me to see who and what I am. And hallelujah, we still say hallelujah in Alabama. And hallelujah, all the darkness of the universe cannot subdue the light of my own butterbean, my own behind it. Question. Was the grind in the belly the immobility of 20 years, the steel plate, the terminal illness, the appearance of age, the dimming vision? Was it? Was it bad? No way. No way. Now let me make it clear why it isn't bad. In simpler terms, it's obvious that a lightning bug isn't going to see his blink unless it's dark enough for the light to be seen, but let's go on and be real practical about this thing. Let's just be real practical because it's so simple. I tell you the truth that I'm talking about, the truth that identity is, you see, is simple. It must be. It must be. Believe me, if it weren't simple, then the truth is limited only to those who read these great tomes of erudition, who read Uspensky or somebody else to the hilt, studying this kind of system or that kind of system and knocking themselves out, mind-bending exercises, bent like a pretzel, meditating into oblivion in order that the truth be true? What kind of infinite love would exclude 99 and 9/10% of all life from itself? So it's simple. And I would like to point out, maybe, again, sounding overtones, how simple it is. Once upon a time, ding, another note on my xylophone. Hey, I got something now. That means I'm sounding another note. Once upon a time, I had come out of the army because of my father's illness and death, and he left me a business to run. But I was a soldier. I'd been a soldier all my life. Infantry soldier, having fought in 2 wars, and having done all kinds of things like that. I was not a businessman, but here I'm a businessman, and consequently being no businessman, and having my head stuck in books and writing all the time, because I kept a journal. I keep a journal for myself. I did very little running of the business, and pretty soon the business was head over heels in awful anguish and despair, and my family was suffering, and all around me suffering, except those who came to me for help. Now, as a practitioner, I was very successful in helping everyone, but I was very much amiss in being able to help myself. I couldn't, and I was filled with despair, and I had the great grind in the belly, and I saw a great mountain of bills in front of me. Now, this is true. This is just the way it was. One morning, I'm sitting at the desk, and I have a great pile of bills in front of me, and it was time to pay them. I had a very small amount of money in a banking account to pay them, so therefore it wasn't possible to pay them. Now, under those circumstances, it seems a human inclination to put off paying your bills until the last minute. And I had, and the last minute had come as creditors threatening to put me out of business, and mortgages to be foreclosed and all kinds of things, leases to be canceled. But here I am, and I'm sitting there with an awful grind in the belly. And yet I knew that salvation didn't lie in playing the world's game. No matter how terrible the situation got, rather than go out and play the world's game with business, I would turn again more fervently to the beginning. And what is the beginning? So simple. This awareness is it. But whose? Not a Bill's awareness, or a Rachel's awareness, or Mary's, or Jan's, or Jane's, or Jack's. God's awareness. Therefore, this awareness is observing qualities and attributes of God, since there is just God and none else. And this was a position that I kept returning to. Well, here I am, and I'm looking at those papers. And I'm looking at the bill. And I'm looking at and I'm feeling the anguish of all of this. And I'm saying, all right, now what? And finally, in grand despair, I picked up a pencil and I said, Father, it's peace I ask for. Now, by the way, just real quick, Father, or mind, and its self-awareness are one mind. We're not talking about dualism here. God, the ineffable presence that is being this awareness, which is life, are not a two, but one. Mind and its awareness are one mind. So when I say Father, I mean mind. That, the ineffable, being this mind I am. So I said, it's peace I long for. Not a theorizing, I want to feel it. And its perfection I long to see. And since it seems I was stuck to looking at tangibility, I wanted to see peace tangibly in the people, places, and things arena. I didn't want some ivory tower bit of speculation where I could be peaceful like a high trip on a drug or something. I wanted peace here, now. And I wrote it. It's peace I ask for, Father, perfection I long to see. Then I heard this thump, 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 a tinkle coming through the window. And I looked outside, and there was a little boy on his way home from school. First grader, I expect, because it was early in the afternoon, and they get out before the second grade does. And he was dragging a stick or a pencil or something along the iron railings of a fence across the street, and there was Joy, going home. Smile on his face, a skip in his feet, and you know what such a sight looks like. And I said to myself, I'm thinking, he doesn't have all these bills to pay. God, if I could just not have bills to pay like that, be that innocent. And he doesn't have to worry about dinner and the money to pay for dinner, or home and the money to make the rent payment. He doesn't have to worry about that. And I'm sitting there envying something when now it seems, you see, that I've kind of like fallen away. But I come home again. Where did the little boy appear? I said to myself. Why, within awareness. So the joy I see there, is really here as this awareness. So, for the first time after years, but here, this is like a confessional, isn't it? But for the first time, it dawned on me that was my joy. But more than that, I had written it. I'd asked, and there was a proof that I had said, it is peace. I asked for, Father, perfection I long to see. And there was peace walking down the street. There was perfection, a little boy skipping on. Now, let me tell you what happened practically, just to keep it in the people, places, and things arena of practicality. What happened was just suddenly an experience that had happened many times before, but it felt as though the anguish just drained right out of me. Now, we have all had this happen many times. It might be when we're turning the corner and we see a sunset. All of a sudden, unexpected, or a friend walks in the room, somebody we love, and there is an unexpected joy, or a phone call, or just a leaf falling out of a tree. It's happened many times. We felt that just sense of joy for a moment. But this was the first time I realized that joy was my joy, the joy of the child across the street, that all joy that ever comes to me at all in any way appears in one place only, within this awareness. And it was that realization. The first time I made the bridge rather than the pagoda. I built the bridge, and I saw that recognition allowed the grind to go right out of my belly. And it did. And I said, thank you, Father. I wrote it on a piece of paper. I still have the paper. Thank you. Okay, what? So what? I don't care how mumbo-jumbo or how ridiculous or dualistic or childish or whatever. I'm telling you, okay, it worked then. And then I stood up and I watched that little boy. I got up and I went to the window and I watched him as far as I could, and he was still banging the fence. And I felt this great sense of relief. And because it was counterpoised with what had been anguish a moment before. Is that the second one? And we've gone through a whole hour? Wow. Okay. Because it was counterpoised against the other, I knew what joy was. It was the absence of that anguish. And I said, thank you out loud. But now what I did, I sat down, took a deep breath, and I said, all right, now I can pay so many bills, and so I'll just go ahead and do it. Now I have strength to do it. To heck with the rest of them. I'll pay what I can. But then, wait a minute. Then I said, now wait a minute, Bill, wait a minute. Savor this a minute. Savor this joy. After all of that human activity there, the bills and the worry about them and the frustration, that's what seemed to accumulate line upon line until I felt that weight of Job and the grind and the... But I'd learned a lesson. And while there was the grind and the grate in the belly, I felt, some little bit of truth has disclosed itself that is applicable right here to this tangible arena. After all, this is the only place one wants the peace, we know that where the ineffable is, peace is all that's present. And we know that the ineffable is everywhere, but there it appears also. The qualities and the attributes of the ineffable, with its dualisms, with its divisions, its hot, cold, its red and green, yellow, blue, and so forth. But I had made the connection. So here I am on my way home that night with the grind back in the belly. And I was to go get a bus, and where I would catch the bus was right in front of a men's store. And I'm lamenting to myself how broke I am and how absolutely without funds and how what little I had was fast going, and that furthermore at this time I had heard of a physical condition for myself that was supposed to be terminal too, and this was supposed to require great amounts of money if I were to pursue it in that manner. And I was wondering where all of this was to come from. But I stopped to get the bus in front of a clothing store, men's clothing store. And there was a display of Buxton wallets in the window. And they were all flat. You know how they display them? They lay them out flat, one on top of the other. Flat! I don't know how they get them so flat. And I said to myself, there are 5 wallets there that are just as flat as mine. And it struck me funny. Now, right there, with a little bit of humor, I noticed again, out went the anguish. This time, though, I said, this is the joy I'm looking for. And I said, thank you. And as I got on the bus, it stayed with me. A joy, a simple, gentle joy. It can only be summed up in the simplest words. I laughed because I saw a silly sight, and I made something funny out of it for myself. An inside joke. It was tested very quickly, because when I got home I was something like 2 hours late. Dinner had long ago burned and been thrown away or something, or put back in the refrigerator, but you know, I didn't hear a word of that. I didn't mind it. I sat down very quickly before the bridge escaped so I could remember it. I wrote every bit of it I could. I found the words for it as best I could so that I might put it to the test again and again. Now this morning, excuse me for going over, but we'll take our break. I just want to finish the chord I'm striking. This morning, I called your attention to the time when you were a kid, and then maybe something happened that gave you that grand bang of joy. You know, when that airplane was up there writing, the word it was writing was totally inconsequential. What gave the joy was the sound of that straining engine, the idea that there was just somebody up there flying an airplane and writing a word, the idea that there was anybody that could do such a thing and that all eyes were looking in that direction, the sound of that engine straining, the wonderment of it all, the total scene. The little boy joyed at that. That little child joy is still here with us. It got nothing to do with the body. It's got nothing to do with the vicissitudes of health, wealth, or anything else. That joy is eternal. And it's here as the heart child that awareness is. We'll take a break and we'll pick up where we left off. Let's take 10 minutes. I'll sound a bell. Going to Chicago, his plane just barely got in when a snowstorm settled over the city, a veritable blizzard. And he managed to get to his hotel. And that night when the seminar was to begin, there was no one there. And he did even as St. Francis of Assisi. He preached to the poor boy. He spoke to himself, because that would be all he was doing anyway. Right here, right now, one awareness is present. Makes no difference how many in it. I've gone places and there would be no one. I've gone places, there would be many. I've had Visitors come as one. Visitors come as many. Visitors come as none. It makes no difference. Awareness includes them all. And when this is understood to the point that you will all understand it, suddenly you'll see that the salvation of the world, to use that old term, is no one else's responsibility. But it exists right here as this awareness that does the perceiving of the world. And if you are living alone in a cottage, or if there are only 2 or 3 of you, or whatever, the entire universe is there. And if there's anything wrong with the universe, it lies in the seeing there and is to be understood there. And no traveling and going out and talking to multitudes is necessary. And so it is that the solipsistic message, or the holistic message, or whatever term you want to give it, would appear to be one who finally is never heard from again. Who understands that the perceived don't perceive, that there is only one perceiving going on, the divine perceiving. And those of you who are familiar with the old Oriental ideas, I'm sorry that at the moment I cannot bring the name to mind, but it isn't important. But he was a venerated Taoist, I believe. His name will pop in a minute. In any event, people came from far and wide to hear him. But finally he said, no more instruction, no more. But people insisted. And he left them waiting for a long, long time, months, outside in the rain, living in the forest and in the trees and whatnot, waiting for this man to come out and give one more lecture. And finally he agreed, and he came out and he gave one more lecture. And as it turned out, it was his next to last lecture. But at that lecture he said, what I am living is infinite, and I therefore cannot find finite words to say it. So therefore what I say will not be it. And inasmuch as what I'm living is infinitely intangible, what you see with your eye is finitely tangible. So what you see me doing couldn't possibly be it either. And it would be silly to mimic or copy me. Then he said, thank you, gentlemen, very much, and dismissed him. That was his next to last lecture. Well, they insisted, and that he'd give another one. And he left another group waiting for, this time, if I remember, several years, to hear his final utterance. And when the day came that the master came out, he stood before everyone and he said, I would ask you to remember that the perceived do not perceive. And he turned and walked away and was never heard from again. So it is that the solipsistic message should be the last message. Let me point out how this would appear in tangible affairs to work for yourself. And here again I sound a note. Now, I was a practitioner in the arena of metaphysics, Christian Science to be precise. I did very well as a practitioner. I wasn't listed in the journal, by the way, because I was a soldier too. It was in the days when suddenly there seemed to be a polio plague everywhere. And everyone was concerned about their children. And I had a lot of calls about polio. I would do my thing. Don't have time to go into that. There's something to do, you know. There is a real way to view the universe and to see what appears as illnesses or whatever that is efficacious and effective, dramatically so, marvelously so. I would do it. Come a letter a day or two later, or a phone call or something, and there would be sounds of healing, great joy, happiness. And I would say, thank you, Father, for another proof of the perfection I am. But then the phone would ring again. Another little boy or a little girl and a fearful mother or father or grandmother, another same problem. And so suddenly it seems to me, as I sit there thinking to myself, writing to myself, the truth, if the truth is true, it's universally true. If I solve a problem, or an arithmetic problem once, and prove that I can do addition, why should I keep getting more problems of addition thrown over and over? Now, once I've seen through, why is there another problem to present itself? And this was the reasoning I was going through. Why the dickens do I have to do this over and over and over? Why, if it's true that I am sitting here and every time the phone rings it's another thing and I'm to hear the good report and then the phone rings again, why, there at that time were 2 billion people in the earth, and I wondered, am I supposed to talk to 2 billion people one by one of my visions of myself? No, of course not. And I thought, well, now wait a minute. There's one awareness. There are not many little minds. The perceived, that we call the voice at the other end of the phone what we have just perceived, what we've just heard. You see, the one that you see here, this is a perception that you're seeing. The object of vision is the perceived. All right? Okay. So, but the perceived don't perceive. Awareness perceives. Okay, I wrote this to make sure I understood. Writing is a means. See how clear you have made it, whether you're cutting a sharp edge or whether you've got a dull meat axe there. Cut it sharp so that it's clear, clean. And so I wrote it. That problem solved once is universally solved. That is, the truth is universally true. I don't have to go through this thing over and over and over. And this was, in essence, what I was writing about. I got up from my desk and I went downstairs and got ready to go home and picked up an evening newspaper. And the headlines on the evening newspaper were, "Miracle Vaccine Discovered. Jonas Salk in California has discovered the vaccine that promises an immunity for the whole world." I don't care how confirmation comes. What difference does it make how confirmation comes? If awareness is God's seeing going on, and that's what it is, then who am I to say how something is to appear? That is, who is this possessor who would say, all right, healing. Somebody calls and says, I don't have enough money to pay my bills. And then we sit down and we supposedly know the truth about all of that and whatnot. But who is this one who would say that the demonstration or the confirmation of that should appear as dollars coming to pay the bill? What a limitation to place on infinity. But anyway, back to the story. That night, it seemed to become clear to me that the resolution of the trials and tribulations apparent in the world, that I accepted as trials and tribulations in the world, the resolution of them depended on this one I am and on no one else. The upshot of that comes the recognition of what an insidious prolonger of ego is this business of judgment. I like, I don't like. The one who says I like and I don't like inevitably is that one who says this is my awareness, this is my life, this is my world, and so forth. But the thing that fed it seemed to be this incessant, I like this and I don't like that. What a revelation it was to me. I began to live it. I cut out this I like and I don't like. I starved to death that sense of ego that would say it. And I kept waiting for a universal appearance of that. And when it didn't come, then it seemed, all right, I'll do it myself. And did. I was no writer. no talent in that regard. But I did it. I just did it. And I whispered the message. And it was everywhere heard. Now, you'll see for yourself. You'll think of an idea from the top-down position, not the bottom-up, from top-down. That is, this is God's awareness, viewing the qualities and attributes of God position. Watch how quickly universal confirmation will present itself. That is, how quickly that view will be confirmed. Oh, I know that all of you have had ideas like maybe somebody ought to invent thus and such. Yeah, this would be a grand thing to invent. And then a week later, a month later, there it was. And you'd say, gee, why didn't I rush out and do it? It would have been mine. It is yours. It was yours. It came as confirmation of the very idea that held it. Now, I don't have time to go into all of this now. We can, with our extended time tonight, when we can cover anything you like, in any detail you like. But those who have studied with me over the years have seen that confirmation is way, way beyond the laws of average. Way out of proportion. It's not just an accidental happenstance that one says, aha, here is the solution. And then lo and behold, there it is. It comes forth as another paper, as another medicine, as another procedure, as another discovery by science, or as another something found somewhere, new source of energy. And the responsibility lies here as this awareness to do it. This one that listens right now to a mirror of itself called Bill. Story about mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? Awareness is the very identity that is you. And finally some mirror comes along to tell you so. Recently, Harper's published this statement. I would like to read it. A statement from a pamphlet published by Harper. We are looking for the seminal idea, the objective judgment of the trend of things, the air-clearing burst of indignation, which will suddenly throw everything about us into a new perspective. David, and which, as likely as not, will come from some individual who sits all by himself, unorganized, unrecognized, unorthodox, and unterrified. We are here talking and trying to find words as best I can what the seminal idea is, the new idea, the wave of the so-called future. If, as in years past, we have looked for the messianic message to come from out there, the ills of the world to be healed by something out there, a new philosophy to come from somewhere else out there, then we're doing no better than has gone on since the beginning of history. Ultimately, we see that this awareness, being all-inclusive, the onus lies with this one, that I, the divine identity, I am. Now, you know, when you take that identity to be your own, it doesn't change anything. The trees still look like trees. The bills are still on the desk. The children still look like children, and there are the same problems everywhere, but the perspective is immensely different. What has literally transpired under such a set of circumstances? One has literally taken the so-called sins of the world unto oneself, which is what is heralded as the Christ's first move. That is, all that would appear to be wrong, if anything appears to be wrong with perfection, would have to be a misinterpretation made here is I. So as awareness, as the divine awareness of faith, the onus lies with us to see what is before the eye. Jesus said, know what is before the eye. Then heaven will be revealed. Lift a stone, and behold, I'm there. Cleave a piece of wood, and behold, I'm there. It is then a matter of this awareness, being the Messianic Savior. If one still feels that something's wrong with the universe, when one takes such a step, I think that your experience, I know that the experience that you would have with this, I'm stumbling for words, I'm having a hard time. The experience you'll have will be precisely what this had. That lo and behold, the things that before you had called ugly, called terrible, called sinful, called whatever, will be called by a new name. You will see the same things, but you'll see them in a new light. Where before you saw ill health, you will see what is really there, health made plain. Where before you condemned a grind in the belly or the absence of dollars in the wallet, you will see what is really there, joy, wealth made plain. And you'll begin to call it by its new name. And to whatever extent you call it by its new name, believing it so, knowing it so. Jesus said, whatsoever things ye ask, believing, ye shall receive. How true it is. How true. The problem here in our Western way of thinking is that no one here seems to understand the absolute dedication that's required. And yet it is not a faith that requires great mustering of strength. It isn't that. It isn't that. It looks that way. But it's the same kind of faith that a little boy has when he just looks at wonderment at a frog. And looks in amazement, knowing that that's a wild thing there. Wow, look at the bumps. Look at the bumps and look at the lines. That's all. That's the kind of faith that I'm talking about. And all a master can possibly do is to lift one's faith in the ineffable to that point where the ineffable, that which is being this awareness, God, means more than anything and is the basis for all mentation, all tangibility, all seeing. It is literally too simple for words. I tore this page from my journal and I'll read it. I found that writing, keeping one's journal to oneself, is a most efficacious and fun thing to do. There is a gentleman here with us this afternoon whom I love very much, and his friend, who once told me, I can't write. Oh, I can't write. I'll never be able to write. And his book has gone around the world. And he's got another one that's going to go around the world many more times. And he has written the most beautiful book. His name is David Manners. He's written a book called Look Through. Is that it? Look Through? That you would enjoy, I'm sure. He began keeping a journal because during the time you write, when you're writing what's good and true and beautiful, then I assure you that mentation is stayed on those things that are good, true, and beautiful. And there can't be a simultaneous concern about what isn't at the same time. So I tore a page from a journal, and I'd just like to, because it talks about this, I'd like to say, just read it. And I'm really sounding a note. Therefore, it may sound disjointed, like it's not connected to the former thing, but now you listen. Now this is just what was written and the way it was. I don't mean that we have to be writers. I just mean that this, to keep a little notebook or something. Sometimes in the morning I sit before the typewriter, free and easy. Eyes closed, I turn consciousness loose, so to speak, giving it wings to soar and sing, and to soar and sing in any direction it chooses, whatever song it chooses, if it chooses, while I watch and listen. It's almost as if I'm forced to do this, having been brought from trying to write something on my own, as Bill, from trying to put ideas together as if I had something of myself to say or talk about. And invariably I find I haven't and can't. That is, Bill hasn't and couldn't. So I'm forced finally to just close the eyes, fold arms, sit still, rather emptied of personal thinking. And then, very often, something happens. Now what happens, I can't describe. It's very much as though a frisky, long impenned dog, spirit like a puppy, is suddenly unleashed and given run of the countryside. And away it goes, bounding everywhere, up and down, over and around, from thought to thought, to thought, to feeling, to thought. But almost of a certainty, it finds some interesting avenue to press its nose against and sniff and follow and scratch around, even as I watch delightedly. Now sometimes it's possible to take these new sniffed out wonders, just sometimes, and wrap them around with words and put them on the paper. Oh, but the temptation, of course, when this happens, is to not write anything, but rather to just stay with that wandering, skipping, laughing, joyful, puppy spirit as it wends its way through a very beautiful universe that's right here now. To stay with that puppy while it searches out wonders under every leaf thought and blossom idea that's around. Now, I'm always amazed because this free spirit that bounds is me, is I, is identity. It's my identity. Now, the old one at the typewriter, the old one that's the one that holds the leash in his hand. The one at the typewriter is the binder, the constrictor. And that's only a part of me. But I would caution those of you, even as I was cautioned, not to spend too much time writing, because if you spend too much time trying to do the writing, then the puppy's lost sight of. And the puppy's called back to the leash, and then suddenly the mundane affairs of the old man are there all over again. In writing, it is often the words of others that are the trigger or the primer, the wadding, the gunpowder, the fuel, the spring, the cantilever that allows thought to flow. So I trigger it. I pick up somebody's book, somebody's idea. I read an article in a newspaper. I read a poem. I look at some of David's beautiful words, or Bill's, or whoever. But very often I go back to my own, written in earlier days, at another time, and run from that. And then once the muse is there, free of body encumbrances, I tell you, the spirit takes its own courses, searching and finding out truths that are grander than you could possibly believe. Rachel, was that the first half hour or the second of all? You see, these ideas you're listening to are not new at all. And to prove it, I would just like to read this that I'm sure you've heard before, but now you'll hear it as a third note of an overtone. And you'll also see that, but this, and also it'll be your own hearing. You've read it before, but see now if there isn't another meaning. This was a Christmas letter written to someone that was kept and recorded, and now it's a part of a lot of Christmas cards. But listen, I salute you, friend. There is nothing I can give you which you have not got. But there is much, very much, that while I can't give it, you can take it. No heaven can come to us unless our hearts find joy in today. So take heaven. No peace lies in the future, which is not hidden in this present little instant, right here, right now. So take peace. The gloom of the world is but a shadow. Behind it and within our reach is joy. There is radiance and glory in the darkness, could we but see. And to see, we have only to look. I beseech you then, look. Please, look. And so, at this time, I greet you not quite as the world sends greeting, but with profound esteem, and with prayer that for you, now and forever, the day breaks and the shadows flee away. I'm told that that was written in the year 1533 by Fra Giovanni. I'm sorry, 1513. Christmas is for children, and therefore it's for everybody. All men are little boys at heart, and all women are little girls. If the child joy of the holidays has lessened over the years, it's only because the child one has grown world weary of the struggle to measure up to a possessor's expectation. Tired of intellectualism, of the ponderous choices that judgment demands, and of the guilt that we allow to be heaped on the heart. If one would joy in this holiday, as in those days of yore, in anticipation of Christmas, the way we used to, when all the trees were decorated and we could smell cedar and we could string popcorn and we could hang those things that glistened and shimmered and shined, when we would decorate the cookies, the gingerbread man, the joy of that season. If we would joy in that again, and smell the pine boughs the way we used to, if we would fulfill those pleasures again with the enthusiasm unabated by years, unabated by time, or the accumulation of memory, or the guilt of what a war had done to us, of what murder and all of those things had done to us, then let's uncover the heart, the child heart. Let's put intellectualism aside just for a time, long enough to see that that child heart is still there. Because we really are children at heart, and we remain so eternal. No matter how any of you right now view this day and how this day seems, and how sore your butterbeans are from sitting all these hours in a chair. I don't care how the day seems, the child of us still is. as much as it ever did in days gone by, and it's as lively as ever. I live in a little place called Woodsong. It's a beautiful little cottage in a grove of pine trees planted by my human father. Trees he planted himself. The woods, I know, are happiest when a boy stops by to play, for it's only then in the quiet glen that the wood song sing all day. My heart, I know, is happiest when I go in reverie to the bower I knew and thought I outgrew, where the wood song still sings to me. All right, you folks, all of you are invited. My Rachel and I invite you with all my heart to visit us there yesterday and today and tomorrow, all times past and all times to come. But now listen, who needs an invitation? The earth doesn't ask for the leaves of the trees. They just come together and they touch in their season. They meet, giving one to the other. They meet face to face, and they touch for a time. And then in time, they're one earth, one awareness, one life. Perhaps the heaviness of a fall rain, knocks the leaf off. Maybe it's a strong wind, Santa Ana wind or something. But they meet in their time. Two become one, tangibly, in sequential time, because the two are one now in infinite fact, already. And the joining of this two is so soft and so natural that it's as soft as a persimmon falling. It's as natural and so natural that the squirrels don't fuss, the squissels don't fuss, and the jaybirds don't complain. And all right. That concludes. That is the end of the second hour. Tell me, are we at the end of the second hour or close to it? Yes. Second 2 hours, I mean. All right, that concludes the part of the seminar. And I'm very glad to have all of you here. But I promised that I would stay and have another time, an opportunity for me to give additionally. That can be either this afternoon or this evening. It can be now or it can be this evening. We're prepared to have this room for tonight. If one or two or three want to be here just to ask personal questions and to kick things around and to be very specific about such matters as life and death and money and health and wealth and bunions and corns or whatever. It's all of it's very serious, and I don't mean to make light of any of it, but I will, to the best of my ability, answer. So, for those of you that are going to go, thank you all. I don't think we've clarified whether it's going to be this afternoon or not. Who wants to stay this afternoon? Who would rather be here for a time this evening, or if anyone? It doesn't make, you don't have to. Nobody got to.
What would you like? Would you like to rest? And
No. The strength that awareness is. Yeah. Body may, if you like, but now listen, those that are on schedules and have to go, please feel free to go. There will be no ego offense if anybody gets up and stomps out, anyway. But I will sit down from this point on, and we'll all shoot the bull. But please, those that want to go, and let's take a 10-minute break, and that will be in lieu of this evening. All right?
Sure.
Thank you. Sue, you won't come and speak to me. She came all the way from Arizona. And Sue, we love you, and I want you to meet Rachel. Folks, I guess I can say something. I'll bet change of attitude or whatever that seems to make the crooked places straight in our affair. But the one thing I didn't follow through on because there wasn't time, and that was, okay, how does one maintain it? How to maintain it? And I'd like to tell you in the only way I can, and that is what has transpired in my own affair. Let me tell you, I've seen it when it was listened to by those such as yourself and put to the test. I know it worked. And I have countless letters telling me so. As a matter of fact, I have only been out, like this public talking about overtones. This is only the second time. This was something that was always reserved as part of the talks with those who would visit where I knew that faith and the trust and the desire and the love and everything was absolutely paramount. So it was sort of like my own little personal bit of so-called class instruction. Well, these are the so-called final days. The statement is there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. There's nothing covered that will not be uncovered. So what the heck? I went down to Clearwater. I don't go out talking very much, as you people who've known me for years know, because perhaps this again sounds self-serving. I don't mean it that way. You don't hear many people with a top-down message that would start with infinity and stick there, and start with awareness and stay there. Simply because it does not induce. It does not induce. What am I trying to say? A following. What it does is it points out to each his own uprightness. Consequently, it seems that it is a final message. I am joyed to find those like David Manners, who just left, who publishes his own book. Now, many of you here will. You'll write. And all these things that you've heard, you'll hear again, except it'll come forth as your own overtone. And you'll say it better, live it more thoroughly, speak with greater authority, and perhaps do it in a much grander way to a grander audience of yourself. And then, too, you'll find that you can quietly then live it. And so, as I say, I don't go out very often with it. And only then when I'm invited. Because those prepared to hear what you listen to and really hear what was said are not those who are going to test one wine, compare one philosophy to another. Hold it up like you were wine testing or comparing the caliber, the quality of the water, and yet 99 out of 100 of us do that. I did it for years and years. It was just, we all do it, and we do that for good reason. But, okay, so I went down to Clearwater and thought, well, I will talk about overtones, and I did it. And I have had so many letters since, including one I got today, that came as somebody that sent a tape to somebody about it. And the statement, in essence, is, oh, the overtones are coming through, hand over fist. Well, all right, I want you to know that during the 4th hour of this lecture, I sounded the concluding chord to 3 or 4 or 5 of the, I don't know, I have to look here, of the overtones that I can produce for myself. Consequently, I know there will be a following impact. This will not be a lecture you forget. It isn't that you're going to remember this, Bill, Samuel. There's no reason to. Maybe in some loving way, perhaps, but not that you're going to hear the words or remember the stories in detail. That's not important. But the overtones will come through as a consequence of this. Now, I can only sound 7. I suppose maybe there There are more, many more. I'm sure there must be. But in all the years, there are only 7 real tones that are outside the arena of my ability to just be articulate. They're just 7. I used to think that wasn't very many until a musician once told me that that's all the notes there were and that the whole symphonies could be. Now, what I did is not mysterious at all, not mystical. I don't think I need to go into the detail, but I would like to say this, that some of them that were said, one of the reactors will be anger. Let's just say that something happens and all of a sudden you get mad somewhere, but it's a deep anger or a deep resentment, maybe a son or a daughter or something that it hurts. But a couple of the stories you heard will combine with that. And all of a sudden you're going to feel and see anger in a new way, a beautiful way, and know why it's going on. And you will suddenly be able to look at it much more objectively than you ever did before. Now, how can I say that right here with my bare face hanging out? How can I say it so? Because I've seen it so. It took me a long time to understand what was going on. As these things happened in my affairs, I don't need to get off into the detail of that unless somebody wants to know. Ask me about it. But I did sound some. You're going to hear things. There's a lady here that tells me she's heard overtones in her affairs. And it seems sometimes a guide what to do, what not to do. But, okay, that is the only way at the moment that I know of that has ever been used anywhere as a means of saying that which lies beyond word. So I did it. Now that you know I did it. So much for that. There are several areas that I've been asked questions in. One was to finish up with how to make it permanent. So may I go ahead and do that first? I have a tone I can sound that will help you understand this. The normal experience as we listen to anything that is metaphysical or absolute. Let's go beyond metaphysics to the absolute itself. It would appear that from those talks comes an exhilaration, an elation. But it is not necessarily very long-lived. We might maintain that sense of joy for a day or 2 or 3 or a month or 2 or 3. But I can only speak for this experience I am. It never lasted much longer than that until I would be back in combat, faced with another situation, or back in a financial situation or a family situation or something that would bring me down. And I was quickly back in the slough of despair. And the anguish was exceedingly dark. It was like the dark hole that Elijah fell in. So here's what I would like to say in that regard. If during the course of this talk, or if as the overtones began to sound, some of them are rather quick. I planted things that bloom in the spring. That's how I refer to them. The quick ones. There will be some sense of elation, joy that should be apparent pretty quick, soon. Some will be much slower in coming about. But if you experience any sense of joy, a sense of recognition of peace within, any measure of it, that is all that's necessary. That's the beginning. In the East, this is put in a way, they say this is like falling into the stream. From that point on, the stream carries one to his destination. So I assure you that once the thing called illumination or enlightenment is felt in any measure, and it always comes as a sense of joy within, relief, release, a sense of, the air's lighter. Thank God I can breathe again. That's it. Please don't make it a big road to Damascus thing. It's that simple. It's like the little boy looking at a frog. If you felt it once, that's all that's necessary. Now, those scholars of it If you want to go and see what the so-called enlightened, illumined, or the elect of the world have had to say, they agree that that's the beginning of it and that it is self-perpetuating. It would appear that we can, with human actions and with personal motives and with our own angers and deceits, and especially with ego, it would appear that we can stymie it for a time. But ultimately the truth will out. All right, so here's what I want to say, and I'll use it as an analogy. If and when it happens again, a sense of joy, please understand that unless you can be trusted with pennies, you'll never get dollars. Seems to me that's in the Bible somewhere. It's also in Upanishad. It's in the Gita. Lao Tzu said something almost like that. So it's been printed many times. We be faithful with little things. All right. Instead of this thing, enlightenment, light, joy, being a huge thing like Paul had, stricken blind, the absolute thing with angels, understand it's little. It's little. It might just be a smile that you get from your wife or your husband at a time when you need it. It may just be a pat on the hand, and it comes as thank you, a sense of joy. Like on television. They need me. It may be just that. But when it's recognized as that, it takes the recognition to say, this is it. Thank you. Now don't ask me why the thank you. For me, I've been so analytical about everything, I would try it the other way. I'd say, all right, next time something gives me a thrill, I see a little boy, my heart runs out to him because his mom was giving him a spaghetti or something, I'll say, I won't say thank you. See how that is, right? And thank you seems gratitude expressed. A tangible utterance. The inside made outside. When you write something, by the way, you know that what you're doing, the idea comes from within. The thing called the body is that point at which the outside becomes the inside and the inside outside, where the two become a single one. That's what it is. All right, so the external exclamation of thank you, I don't know why, but it worked. All right, now listen, the next time that joy happens, say thank you again. Remember this analogy, and I'll paint the picture so that you won't forget it very easily. That experience of joy, even if it's little, or even if it's a grand one, is like a tree that blooms. Say a fruit tree in the spring, an apple blossom. Now if it's a little dinky tree, it has its blossoms on it, but it's blossom. It's a big tree, it's got a lot of blossoms, and they smell great.